welcome back to my channel about everything having to do with books. It's been a little while since I posted a video because of all the things going on at the end of the school year, but now that it's summer, I will hope to be posting once a week more regularly. So, the first video that I'm going to be making after this long hiatus requires a bit of an explanation. I have a very long list of books that I want to read. Like, it's out of control, probably over 500 books on there, which I'm sure a lot of people have a very long to be read list as well if you're watching this video, but I have devised a plan to help myself get through this long list, or at least work through it, because it's probably going to be going on my whole life. But so what I do is I go through my TBR list and I make a list of 10 books and 10 series that are top priority. And even though I might read other books or other series within reading those 20 overall book projects, those are the ones that I'm ultimately working towards. And I just started doing this a little while ago. So for this video, I'm going to be sharing my first books, 10 books and 10 series that I read for this pattern that I do, and when I finish it, when I finish reading another one, I will make another video with those 10 and so on. And I will be going in, there were only 2 books, and yeah, both of them are books, 2 books that I did not like, and so I will be going in order of my least favorite to my favorite on these 20 books and series. So here we go. Number 20th on my list, and one of 2 books that I did not like throughout this round, was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I talked a little bit about this in my video about books that I gave to Goodwill, because I didn't like this one, so I gave it away. But this one, I talk a little bit more about it in depth in that video, so you might want to check that out. But it was just boring to me, and there were some undertones in it that I didn't really like, and I kind of skimmed the last bit because it just wasn't interesting to me. I know there are a lot of people that really love this novel, but I honestly it didn't really impact me that way. Number 19, and the other book that I did not enjoy, although I enjoyed it slightly more than The Alchemist, was Sophia Princess Among Beasts by James Patterson. And the only word I can really think of to describe this book is distorted. It just was confusing and weird, and I kind of had trouble pinpointing what exactly the world and the setting was, because there were just so many different factors that made it really hard to read. And I mean, it was a pretty quick read. I read it in, I think, 2 sittings, but it was just weird and distorted is really the only word I can think of to describe it. It might really appeal to some people, but even though I love fantasy, this book just didn't appeal to me. Now we come to the more fun part of this video, the books that I did like. And even though I did enjoy this next book that I'm going to be talking about, one has to come last, and that one is To Kill a Kingdom by Alexander Christo. This one, I believe I hyped it up too much in my head before I read it, so the result I was kind of disappointed by, even though I did enjoy reading it. This is a twist on A Little Mermaid that is pretty popular, but I still enjoyed it, even though a lot of popular books, but this one I hyped it up too much in my head. There wasn't as much action as I was thinking, and more romance than I was thinking, but I still really did enjoy it. And if you like pirates and Little Mermaids and sirens and things like that, then this book will appeal to you. For number 17, we have my lowest rated series in this video, which is Warcross by Marie Lu. And this is a 2-book series and very action-packed, so you can read it very quickly. And even though this is my lowest rated series, I did enjoy this one. And I think that the main thing that made me rank it lower than some of the other books is that it's all about video games and a gaming reality, which is something that I haven't read a lot about or done in real life, so it was a bit hard for me to relate to at some points. But if you like video games and gaming, would definitely be for you. It's very action-packed and very interesting, and I did enjoy it, even though it wasn't my favorite series in this list. Number 16 on this list is An Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson, and This one I didn't dislike, but I didn't like much either. This is like my definition of a 3-star book, where I enjoyed it, but there wasn't anything that I particularly disliked about it. It just felt kind of meh to me. If you really like fairies and that sort of world, then you might really like this one, but it just wasn't my style, and I did enjoy it a lot. But the romance kind of felt a little forced to me, and it wasn't my favorite. And the heroine was kind of annoying, so it wasn't my favorite, but I did enjoy it. Number 15 on my list is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard, and this is a 4-book series, although it also has at least one novella collection, which I have not read, but I have read the 4-book series. And the reason why this is coming so low in the list is because even though I really, really enjoyed the first book, like, I loved the first book, and I liked the second book, the last 2 books I didn't really like, especially the last one. It got lower in quality over the course of the series, in my opinion, and I felt like this is a classic example of an author who was trying to do too much. She expanded the world and the stories over the course of the book, which normally I like, but it just wasn't, in my opinion, wasn't done well. And it also started out in one perspective and later switched to multiple perspectives, which is one of my pet peeves in books. So overall, I liked the first couple books, but the series as a whole wasn't my favorite. Number 14 is Ella Enchanted by Gil Carson Levine, and this is one that I've been wanting to read for a really long time, and finally got around to reading it. And this, the only thing I can really say about it is that it was a very cute read. It didn't really impact me in any way, but I didn't dislike anything in it at all. This was just a cute, fun read that if you haven't read it, I would suggest that you read it, because you could probably read it in an afternoon. It's just a cute, fun read, and there wasn't anything about it that made it rank higher than it did. It didn't particularly strike me, but there wasn't anything that I disliked about it. So overall, even though it didn't really impact me, this was a fun book to read. Number 13 on this list is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and the funny thing about this is when I was making my list of the books and series that I wanted to read, this was just a book. The other novels hadn't come out yet, and either they hadn't come out yet or I wasn't aware that they'd come out, so I put it down on my list as a book, even though now it is a 3-book series. And that being said, I have only read the first book in the series, The Inheritance Games, but all of that aside, I did enjoy this, although I think it was another one that I hyped up too much in my head, so some of the riddles in this felt kind of dull to me, but I was guessing until the very last page, and I would like to read the other 2 books at some point, but it won't be my top priority to read the other 2 books. But overall, this was an interesting mystery, and even though it didn't really hit me so much that I want to grab the other books as soon as they come out, I did overall like it. Coming in at number 12, we have Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson, and this one I definitely liked it better than Enchantment of Ravens, which is the other book by this author that I also read. And this one, I liked the world that it was immersed in, but it did take me a little bit to kind of figure out what everything was. But once I got into it, I did enjoy this read. It's kind of a dark academia vibes to it, so if you like that, then you'll probably like this book. But one of the things that made me rank this book as high as I did within this, because I probably would have ranked it lower if it weren't for this aspect, but was the protagonist. I thought that she was very unique within YA fantasy, a very unique female protagonist, and one of the things that I especially liked about her was that she was tall, and you don't really find tall girls a lot in these books. And someone who remembers this book better than I do, you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think she might have even been taller than the love interest, which is definitely rare, and if it's the case, I would have really liked that, but I don't remember. So overall, this wasn't my favorite, but because of the protagonist, I liked it. Now we've gotten past all of the books that were kind of like I enjoyed but didn't really love, and we're on to the books in this list that I really, really loved and enjoyed. And the first of those is Dangerous Secrets by Mari Mancusi, coming in at number 11 on this list. And I liked it a lot more than I was expecting to like it. It was the story of Iduna and Agnar, Anna and Elsa's parents from the Frozen movies, and especially after their past was kind of dived into in Frozen 2, this book was really interesting to me. I really liked seeing how they met and how events in the book would lead up to the events that happened in both of the movies. The one thing that made this rank a little lower than I would have without this is the fact that it was kind of had some cheesy parts to it. One thing that I really don't like that books based off of movie musicals do is they'll just include the song titles and dialogue, and I don't know why, but that just really irks me, and it is something that this book did a lot. But that's kind of a superficial thing to rank it down for, but other parts of it made it feel kind of cheesy. But besides that, this is a really interesting and fascinating read that delved into some characters that aren't in the movies because they die pretty early on. But overall, if you like the movie Frozen, and especially Frozen 2, you should probably check this out. At number 10, the lowest ranking book in the top half of my books and series is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. And it's kind of funny, I didn't plan this, that the two retellings came right in a row, but the Heartless is a kind of a retelling of, well, not a retelling, but a spin-off of Alice in Wonderland from the perspective of the girl who will become the Queen of Hearts. And it talks about her when she was a teenager and her falling in love and things like that. And this is a very heartbreaking book at the end, but so make sure you have tissues if you read it, but it's also very well done. I talked about this a little bit in my top 10 books of 2021 video, and you might want to check that out. But overall, this was a very interesting read, and I really enjoyed it. Number 9 on the list is the Selection series by Kiara Cass, with 5 books in the series, and it also has a novella collection, which I have read and which I did enjoy. This is a dystopian romance series with more emphasis on the romance than on the dystopian, and normally I wouldn't like a plot that is mostly centered around romance, but I did like this one. It was just a pretty light and fluffy read, and it's a pretty popular series, so I won't talk about it for too long, but if you like romance, you should check this out. It's just a really fun and cute read. Number 8 is Divergent by Veronica Roth, and again, this is another very popular series, so I'm sure you know about it, but it is a 3-book series with a novella collection, which I have read, and overall, this was a very action-packed, intense dystopian series, and dystopian is one of my favorite genres, so of course I liked it. In my opinion, it wasn't quite as good as The Hunger Games or some other dystopian books that I've read, but it still was enjoyable. And even though the last book felt like she was just kind of rushing the series along to the end, but also adding unnecessary plot points in there, so I didn't really like the last book or the ending to the last book, which makes it ranked lower. But overall, the first 2 books were very interesting, and I would definitely like to reread this trilogy at some point in my life. To people who have read both this series and Divergent, it might surprise you that I ranked this one higher, but I actually did enjoy this one a little more than I enjoyed Divergent, and that is Matched by Ali Kandi. It is a trilogy, and I don't know what specifically it was about this that made me enjoy it more than Divergent, because I tend to like more action-packed books, and even though this one had some action, it didn't have nearly as much as Divergent did. But this one, I felt like it had just a tone to it that I really liked, a hopefulness and just a genuineness that I really liked about it. This was just, maybe if I'd read it before I read Divergent, I would have liked Divergent more, but I read this one after, and this one was just a really sweet dystopian series, and I really did enjoy it a lot. So I know some people don't really like it, and I can totally see why you don't like it, because it's not that action-packed, but I personally enjoyed it. For number 6, we have the Maze Runner series by James Dashner. This is a 5-book series, even though technically the last 2 books are 2 different prequels, and I believe there is another book scheduled to come out. I'll have to look into that. But this was a very action-packed, intense, but amazing series, and it was really fun to read because both my sister and one of my close friends, who is as much of a book nerd as I am, had read this right before I did and were begging me to read it. So I read it and I loved it. This was an incredible, both entertaining and sad and funny at some parts series with great characters and a great intense plot. So this was a great read if you like intense action novels. This felt like an action movie in a novel. And the movies, watch the movies after you read the books if you want to, but the books are much better, so read these books. They're so good. Going into the top 5, we have Sisters of Sword and Song by Rebecca Ross, and I've done a whole review on this on one of my other videos, so I'm going to talk about it very briefly, but as I say this, I'm realizing that this is the only standalone book that made it into my top 5, and one of 2 that made it into my top 10, and one of those reasons was because I was very impressed on how it was able to expand on an entire world within one book. And I won't talk about it too long, but this is a really great standalone fantasy novel, and it's not very popular, so you definitely should check it out. At number 4, we have the Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson. This is a trilogy. It is a fantasy trilogy, and I liked this so much more than I expected to. I mean, it was a very fascinating read, and even though it was had a lot of elements that are kind of stereotypical YA fantasy, like a love triangle and the chosen one trope kind of, it was so entertaining. I didn't expect to like this nearly as much as I did. It was an incredibly built fantasy series. I read it over spring break this year, so I read it all at once, and when I finished the last book, I was just fascinated by how much I liked it. So you should definitely check it out. It's a very solid fantasy series. In my top 3, we have number 3, The Unwanted by Lisa McMahon. This is a middle grade 7-book series that is basically dystopian meets fantasy, and I talked a little bit about this one in one of my other videos, but this is just incredible world building, amazing characters. It has an amazing assembly of characters as well. The main gang is a very different collection of people that I really loved. And so this is just a great, I don't really know what to say about this one besides that it's just a really amazing series and you should read it. With the silver medal, in second place we have The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, which is a 4-book series that also has a novella collection, a prequel from the villain's perspective, and kind of a tag-along graphic novel pair of books. And this is just an incredible series. It's very popular, so if you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you've read it. But it's fairy tales meet sci-fi, and so it just appeals to readers of any genre. It's a super fun, fascinating series with incredible world building and really great characters, and I love it a lot if you can't tell already. But if by some chance you haven't read it, you definitely should. Anyone who's been on my channel for any amount of time at all will not be surprised to see that my top book series out of this round of 20 was Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger, which is a currently 9-book series but will eventually have 11 books. And I made another video on how to read Keeper of the Lost Cities, which I will link to in the description, that describes all about that. But for now, all that you need to know is this is a middle grade fantasy series that is so full of such rich world building and such amazing characters and plot twists that will keep you guessing and leave you on the edge of your seat. I cannot wait for book 9 to come out in November, and this is just, I don't really know what else to say. This is just an amazing book series, no matter how many other amazing book series I read, this will always be one of my favorites. Okay, and that wraps up the 10 books and 10 series that I read off my TBR. Overall, I think it was a pretty good first round of doing this. Even though there were 2 I didn't like, I liked all of the rest of them to some extent. So I had a lot of fun doing this. In the comments, let me know what some of the books on your TBR are, or if you have another system that you use to take control of all the books that you want to read. When I'm done with the 10 books and series that I am currently reading, I will make another video talking about those ones. So this will be kind of like a mini series of videos on my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and tell a friend about it who loves to read as much as you do. And now I will close us off with our bookish quote. Books are the plane and the train and the road. They are the destination and the journey. They are home.